This is the first presentation about the muscular system, and the presentation is going to address the very basic principles that we need to understand the muscular system. It is a brief introduction, and we will learn more when we go through the muscular system. In order to understand the muscular system, we need to know the following. We must have good knowledge of synovial joints. These are the most movable joints, and we need to know the specific movements, because we are going to talk about muscles producing these movements. Expansion of knowledge comes from asking questions, many questions, and we should ask ourselves questions before others ask us. And when we ask questions, we should get answers, and we learn a lot from these answers, and there are always more questions than answers. Muscles are arranged in groups. Very rarely a single muscle does a single action. They almost always come in groups, and this group or these groups, they move joints or other structures, and muscles have the power of pulling. They pull bones around joints, and each muscle has a main action and may have a minor action or two. The bottom line is that muscles work as a team to do a function, and that function is usually movement, and this is how we can move our joints and do our daily activities. And remember that muscles action is a force that has directions. There is in physics no force without a direction. We have more than 600 muscles in the body. In fact, it is around 608. The question is, are these muscles of the same arrangement, same structure, same pattern? The answer is no. We have this form of muscles which is called fusiform, and fusiform means that it is wide in the middle, which is called the belly, and tapers at both ends. This is a fusiform shaped muscle, and when the muscle fibers are arranged parallel to each other, it is called a parallel muscle. And when the muscle fibers form a triangular muscle, it is a triangular shaped muscle. Now here is a special arrangement where the muscle fibers, they come from one side of a tendon, and a tendon is the collection of connective tissue that is going to attach the muscle to a bone, and when the muscle fibers are attached to one side of a tendon, this is called unipinnate. And when muscle fibers are attached on both sides of the tendon, and here the tendon becomes central, then this is called bipinnate. Now, if we need a very strong muscle, then we need to build it by several units of bipinnate. Therefore it is called multi-pinnate. And some muscles are circular, like the muscles around the mouth and around the orbit. Each muscle is a system on its own, and we know that a system is made of several types of tissues. Something we know already is that in a skeletal muscle we have skeletal muscle cells. Now these are arranged in a way and wrapped by connective tissue. So this is the second type of tissue found in muscles. Now muscles can have different types of diseases affecting the muscle cells, and diseases affecting the connective tissue of the muscles. Then muscles have blood vessels that contain smooth muscles and simple squamous epithelium. Plus muscles are contractile structures and they need nerve supply, so we found nerve endings in muscles. Now the connective tissue around a fascicle. And what is a fascicle? A fascicle is a bunch of muscle cells. The connective tissue covering this fascicle is called perimysium, and the connective tissue that covers the whole of the muscle and separates it from surrounding structure is the perimysium. And on the innermost unit, the muscle cell on its own is covered by loose areolar tissue called endomysium. And all these areas of connective tissue, they collect at the end of the muscle and form a tendon. And a tendon is a connective tissue structure that is going to attach the muscle to the periosteum of the bone. To your right, you can see that a cross section of a muscle, and inside this outer periphery you can see groups of muscle cells arranged in almost circle-like structures. These are fascicles. This is a cross section of the whole muscle, and the whole muscle is covered by the epimysium. A single muscle fiber pointed at by the arrow is also having a loose areolar connective tissue cover, and it is called the endomysium.
Let us see what happens when a tendon reaches a bone. Now the muscle, as it comes near the bone, it forms a tendon. Let's look at this area where the tendon is touching the bone. What is going to happen here? The tendon's fibers will mix with the periosteum, especially the outer layer, the connective layer of the periosteum, and the result is a very strong attachment of the tendon to the bone.
We have different types of muscle cells, and we have a specific classification of these muscles. When the basis of classification is the way the muscles contract, we have fast muscles which use glycogen and they are called glycolytic muscles, and we have slow muscles that extracts energy from slow oxidation of materials. If the classification is based on the presence of myoglobin, which is the protein inside these cells, then the muscle cells or the muscle as a whole is classified as red or white. Red muscles have plenty of myoglobins and white muscles have less. Now, shape of muscles as the overall shape can be parallel, fibers are parallel to each other, fusiform, tapered at the ends and more bulky in the middle. They can be circular, triangular, unipinnate, bipinnate, and multipinnate, and we have seen images of these types of muscles. Now, because we have so many muscles and we need to name them, and the naming of muscles is based on either the pattern of the fascicles, the size of the muscle, the shape, the action of the muscle, the number of origins, the points of attachment of a muscle, where is the muscle located, and we can use combinations of any 2 or 3 of these bases of naming. Now, large number of muscles that we have, they are very well coordinated. When a muscle contracts to do an action, the opposite muscles that do the opposite action should relax. Therefore, we have the coordination of muscle types. First of all, the prime mover that does an action. If I want to flex my forearm, I use muscles, and these muscles are called the prime movers. They do the desired action and they are called agonists. When muscles do the opposite action of the prime mover, then they are called antagonists. Then we have to be very delicate in our movements and very coordinated. Therefore, there are unwanted movements that happen during certain skill, and these muscles are called synergists. Now, if we want to move our upper arm, upper limb, we move the head of the humerus on the glenoid cavity of the scapula. Now, if the scapula moves as well, then our movement is not going to be coordinated. So we need to fix the scapula so that the humerus can move on the scapula to produce the desired action, and these muscles are called fixators. In addition to that, there are muscles that are weak prime movers. They help the agonist, they help the prime movers. Now, muscular tissue is an excitable tissue, and this excitability happens when a nerve impulse comes and changes the electricity of the cell wall of the muscle cells. So it comes through an axon, and this axon is a single process of the neuron, as we know, and this axon is going to divide into what is called the axon terminals, and these are having dilated ends called the end bulbs of the axon terminals, and they synapse with the cell wall of the muscle cells, and the neurotransmitters will stimulate the muscle. Now, when large number of muscle fibers are supplied by an axon, this is called a large motor unit. Usually these muscles, they do not produce skilled or fine movements like the muscles at the back. When an axon terminal supplies a small number of muscle fibers, then this is called a small motor unit, and these muscles are going to produce very skilled movements like the muscles of the hand and muscles of the orbit moving the eye. Therefore, we have large motor units and small motor units. The blood supply of muscles, they are usually very well supplied with blood vessels, and they are supplied by more than one blood vessel, and there is connection between these arteries. These connections are called anastomosis. The question now is, how are muscles being attached to the bones so that they can produce efficient movements of the joints? Underline efficient movements of the joints. We have the very distal, the far away point of attachment of the muscle away from the moving joint, and we need this distance because in physics the force equals the distance factor. Therefore, when the muscle is fixed to the unmoving end of a bone or a joint, what do we call this? We call it origin of a muscle. And the muscle comes down, for example in this image, it comes down the arm, it is going to cross the elbow and then attaches near distal part of the elbow joint, and this is the moving bone. The radius and the ulna, they move, and when they move there is movement of the elbow joint, and when this muscle is attached to the movable end of the muscles, what is this called? This is called insertion. Now, this idea we have just discussed moments ago. When a muscle contraction does the action we want, and this is called the desired action, then this muscle is agonist. Again, looking at the arm and the forearm around the elbow joint, and the muscle whose action is that I don't want at this moment. Therefore, this muscle, like in this figure, it is what's called the triceps. It is an extensor of the elbow joint, and I need to do flexion. Therefore, this muscle, which does the opposite of what my desire is, then this muscle is called antagonist. Remember that muscles work as a team. So the muscle whose contraction is going to help the prime mover, what am I going to call it? It is called synergist muscle.